Oh, I'm going to pretend, she said quietly. He wants a supportive wife? Then I'll play the role better than he ever played the role of a faithful husband. Welcome to L.A. Logan's Listening Lounge, where every story is crafted to pull you in, stir your emotions, and keep you turning the pages with your ears. Today's audiobook is The Scandal She Survived, a gripping tale of betrayal, secrets, strength, and the comeback of a woman who refused to be broken. So grab your headphones, settle in, and let's dive into a world where truth can shake a marriage, but resilience builds a whole new life. Chapter 1. When the world shattered, Brooke Price's fingertips brushed the rim of her custom chamomile mug, steam swirling up into the quiet kitchen. Her phone vibrated a single pulse, then a rapid, anxious avalanche. The dish towel slipped from her hands, crumpling on the counter. She pressed her palm to the cool surface, grounding herself as the screen lit up to show 23 notifications. Names she trusted, names she barely tolerated, names she prayed weren't attached to gossip. Her throat prickled, her breath shallow and sharp. She tapped the first link. The headline burned in her eyes, searing each word with a cruel finality. Breaking. Coach Robert Price suspended amid alleged inappropriate relationship with female staff member. She felt the world tilt, the sound of her own heartbeat drowning out the faint sound of the refrigerator. Not Robert, she thought. Not the man who left a note tucked into her lunch every morning. Not the man who always insisted that loyalty and character mattered more than wins. Her teeth grazed her lower lip, the taste of chamomile now bitter. She fumbled for the remote, fingers shaking, and the television snapped on. The sports anchor, voice smooth and merciless. Sources confirmed the staff member in question joined the program 4 years ago, shortly after Coach Price was hired. 4 years ago. Her memories flickered, confetti on the field, Robert's tight shoulders beneath the suit, the laughter that felt rehearsed even then. The phone buzzed once more. Robert's name glowed on the screen. She hesitated, pulse thudding in her ears, then answered. Brooke. His voice was strained, stretched thin. She detected a tremor, an edge she hadn't heard before. Please don't believe what you're hearing. I'm being set up. She pressed her palm to her chest, feeling the flutter beneath skin and bone. Are you telling me it's not true? Robert's breath hitched on the line. I swear to you, this is political, jealous administrators, rivals. They want me out. The pressure. Brooke, you know how many late nights, how many times the boosters threatened my job if we didn't win? I've done everything right. I need you to trust me. Please. I need you to stand by me. Brooke's gaze fell to the chamomile mug, the ring it left on the counter, a stain she couldn't wipe away. She closed her eyes. The world already splintered, her fingers numb, her thoughts scattered. And she knew deep down that this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. The Woman in the Photos. By nightfall, the air outside the Price home snapped with camera flashes, each burst slicing through the darkness. Brooke drew the curtains, their fabric rough in her hands, and paced the living room, the carpet cool against her bare feet. Robert sat hunched on the couch, eyes searching the floor, his thumb tracing circles on his knee, a nervous tic she'd only just noticed. On the television, Kayla Harmon's face swept across the screen, young, bright-eyed, always captured mid-laugh. Brooke stared, the images too vivid, the details too sharp. Kayla beside Robert at practice, Kayla clutching a playbook, Kayla leaning in close, lips parted in delight. A single quiet scene flickered elsewhere. Kayla alone in her car, tapping her steering wheel, her breath fogging the glass. She scrolled through messages, thumb trembling over a text to her mother. I didn't mean for this to happen. The weight of her choices pressed against her chest, shame and ambition tangled. She glanced at her own reflection, jaw set, eyes rimmed red. Was it worth it? The question lingered. Brooke studied the photos on her phone. Each pixel whispered a secret she didn't want to know. The room smelled faintly of cold tea and fear. Is this the woman? Her voice was barely more than a breath. Robert's reply was clipped, his gaze refusing to meet hers. She worked for me. They're twisting it. They said she was hired the year you arrived. Yes, because she interviewed well. Brooke, please drop this. It's embarrassing that you're even questioning me. His words brushed past her, cold as winter wind. Brooke wrapped her arms around herself, trying to hold the pieces together. Tomorrow, she promised herself. Tomorrow, I'll breathe. But the next day, sunlight barely breaking the horizon, Anita barged in, phone in hand, cheeks bright with anger. Brooke, look! Brooke's hands shook as she reached for the device. The photos, intimate, undeniable. Robert leaning in at a restaurant, fingers resting on Kayla's hip, a kiss pressed to her cheek. Time stamped. 4 years woven into digital memory. She sank into the nearest chair, the creak of wood loud in the silent room. The taste of betrayal was metallic, sharper than broken glass, lingering. He said, he lied? Anita's voice was gentle, but her eyes flashed with fierce truth. Brooke pressed her palm to her chest, heartbeat drumming in her ears. The glass world she'd built wasn't cracked anymore. It was shattered, shards scattered at her feet. Chapter 3. The Threat. She confronted him that night, her heart pounding so loudly she feared he might hear it. As Brooke stepped into their bedroom, Robert was already pacing, jaw clenched, hands trembling. The air felt charged, brittle. Where did you see those pictures? He demanded, voice tight. Brooke hesitated, the question echoing in her mind. Do I even know the full truth? Her voice was barely above a whisper. Tell me the truth. He spun on her, face dark. If you go public with anything, if you even think about turning your back on me, I will leave you with nothing. You hear me? Nothing. The house, mine. The accounts, mine. Everything you've enjoyed these past years, gone. Brooke staggered at the venom in his voice, her breath caught somewhere between fear and disbelief. How many times had she swallowed his words, dismissed the coldness, the threats, the quiet humiliations? She remembered every broken promise, every moment she'd questioned her own strength. Now the fear was giving way to something sharper, determination. He'd raised his tone before, but this icy cruelty was new. Why would you even say that? Her voice cracked, a fracture opening within her. Because you're my wife, he snapped, and wives support their husbands, or they suffer the consequences. The silence afterward was thick and suffocating. Brooke could feel her old world splintering, resolve quietly gathering in the shadows. He left the room, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. The sound was final, like the closing of a chapter she hadn't wanted to write. Brooke sank onto the bed, shaking uncontrollably. Was she truly powerless? But beneath the grief, something else was growing. A sense of urgency she hadn't felt in years. Anita rushed in minutes later, having heard the commotion. She wrapped an arm around Brooke, steady and warm. Brooke, she whispered, you don't have to stay and pretend. But Brooke's eyes hardened with something new, a glint of determined resolve. Oh, I'm going to pretend, she said quietly. He wants a supportive wife? Then I'll play the role better than he ever played the role of a faithful husband. For a fleeting moment, Brooke recalled every quiet humiliation, every broken promise. But now, the fear was less than the force of her determination. What are you planning? Anita whispered, voice trembling in the hush. Brooke inhaled slowly, purpose crystallizing in her mind. I'm going to get everything I need, every text, every email, every bank statement, every lie. When I leave, I won't walk out empty-handed. Anita nodded, understanding shimmering in her eyes. Then we'll do this smart, and we'll do it quietly. Chapter 4. Building the Case. Brooke contacted her attorney, Tammy Caldwell, the next morning. She was a woman known for grace, brilliance, and an undefeated divorce record. Brooke's hands trembled as she dialed. Her mouth felt dry, her throat tight with nerves. Tammy listened to everything, her face calm but her eyes sharp, missing nothing. When Brooke's story faltered, Tammy's voice was gentle but unyielding. "Brooke," she said, "you've been emotionally abused for years." Brooke blinked, her heart pounding. I don't think. Yes, Tammy interrupted softly but firmly. "He's isolated you, controlled the finances, and threatened you into silence. But you are not powerless. The law is not on his side." Something fragile inside Brooke expanded, hope, raw and tentative. For the first time in days, she took a real breath. The air felt cold in her lungs, but steadying. Tammy outlined the plan in careful, deliberate steps. "We'll gather evidence discreetly, document every financial discrepancy, access joint accounts, legally record every threat, and uncover any illegal activity. We have to be meticulous." Anita became her silent partner in the mission. At night, the two women huddled over Brooke's laptop, a desk lamp throwing long shadows across the kitchen table. The silence was thick, broken only by the soft clicking of keys and the rustle of paper. "Brooke," Anita whispered one night, pointing at a spreadsheet. "What's this? These withdrawals, these transfers, these payments to offshore accounts." Her forehead creased in worry as she hovered over a transaction labeled consulting. Anita's voice quivered, a note of fear behind her curiosity. "Offshore accounts are often used to hide money or avoid scrutiny," she explained, her fingers tracing the screen. "And look, this one is labeled consulting." Brooke's frown deepened. "He never mentioned consulting. Not once." Anita scrolled further, the color draining from her face. "Brooke, this is tied to sports betting services. These patterns, regular payments, random amounts, and coded descriptions, they're not normal. See how money moves out and comes back in? These look like payoff patterns, money shuffled around to cover illegal activity." The room seemed to shrink around Brooke. Her pulse sent what felt like thunder was thundering through her body. Images of Robert smiling, lying, always in control flashed in her mind. The truth pressed down on her chest, heavy and overpowering. Tammy confirmed their fears in a hushed call, her tone grave. "Brooke, this isn't just cheating," she said. "This is match fixing, illegal gambling. He's been betting on games, possibly losing on purpose, manipulating outcomes for profit." The words hung in the air, stark and damning. Brooke's stomach twisted. The man she once admired, her husband, the hero on magazine covers, was trading integrity for money, for ego, for the thrill of deception. "Keep everything," Tammy instructed, her voice a lifeline. "Every document, every record. We're nearly ready." Chapter 5. The Performance of a Lifetime to the World. Brooke wore the mask of a perfect wife, her smile a porcelain shield against the scrutiny of cameras and crowds. She stood next to Robert as he spun rehearsed answers for reporters, her hand tucked tightly in his, each squeeze a silent warning to stay silent, to play her part. In courtrooms, she nodded supportively, her posture impeccable, her eyes unreadable. She attended every meeting his crisis managers arranged, her presence a prop in a carefully staged play. But beneath her calm exterior, Brooke's heart pounded with fear and doubt. Each public appearance was a test of endurance, each polite smile a betrayal of everything she felt inside. Guilt gnawed at her. Had she enabled this? Anger simmered, sometimes burning hot, sometimes so cold it chilled her bones. Yet it was empowerment, sharp and growing, that kept her moving. Behind closed doors, Brooke was no longer a passive participant in Robert's story. She was becoming the author of her own. Late at night, the house silent except for the sound of her laptop, Brooke pored over damning emails. Every message between Robert and Kayla was another blow to her trust. Her hands shook as she scrolled, the cursor hovering over words that shattered her illusions. Sometimes her breath caught in her throat. She would rub her arms to stop the shivers, fighting the urge to slam the computer shut and turn away, but she pressed on, driven by a mix of alarm and willpower. The financial records told their own sordid tale. Money siphoned away, hidden by cryptic transfers and coded payoffs. Brooke's chest tightened as she followed the trail, rage and heartbreak mingling in her veins. The most incriminating evidence came unexpectedly: a drunken confession. Robert rambling about playing the system better than anyone else. She had recorded his words, her hands trembling as she pressed the button, heart pounding so loudly she feared he would hear. Listening to the audio later, she felt exposed and defiant, the last vestiges of her loyalty crumbling away. Tammy met her in the quiet sanctuary of Brooke's study. "You now hold enough evidence to end his career, secure your financial future, and file for a divorce he cannot contest," Tammy said, her voice a blend of pride and caution. Brooke's fingers lingered on the edge of the folder, the weight of its contents pressing into her skin. She felt the tremor in her hands, but also a gathering strength, a sense of action blooming where uncertainty had lived. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm inside her. Tammy smiled, her confidence a lifeline in the swelling tide of fear and anticipation. "We set you free." Chapter 6. The press conference heard around the world. The morning was unusually warm for late October, the air thick with anticipation and the faint aroma of coffee lingering from the reporter's early arrival. Brooke stood just off stage, nerves buzzing beneath her skin as the harsh auditorium lights cast a feverish glow across her face. Every click of a camera shutter, every hushed whisper, was amplified by the charged silence surrounding her, the sensation making her pulse race. For weeks, Brooke had buried her anguish beneath rehearsed smiles and measured words, each day feeling the weight of secrets threaten to crush her spirit. She recalled the night she sat alone in the dim glow of her study, her fingers trembling as she replayed Robert's drunken confession, his words slurred and callous, his threats echoing with chilling finality. That moment, the realization that her complicity would mean the loss of herself, was when she decided she could no longer remain silent. Reporters crowded the university auditorium, expecting Robert to give a statement clearing his name. They did not expect Brooke to take the podium instead. Robert's confusion was immediate. "What are you doing?" he hissed, voice sharp and desperate. Brooke felt the edge of the folder in her grasp, the roughness grounding her, reminding her of the journey etched into each document contained within. She stepped away from him, chin high, the heat of the spotlights prickling her skin. "Good morning," she began, her voice quiet but steady, carrying through the room like a lifeline. "For weeks, the public has been told half-truths. Today, the full truth will be shared." She opened the folder, the paper crackling beneath her fingertips. Gasps echoed as she displayed images, emails, financial statements, each one a fragment of the pain she had endured and overcome. She narrated each piece calmly, her composure forged by sleepless nights and unyielding resolve. "Coach Robert Price has engaged in an extramarital relationship with a staff member for 4 years. Camera flashes exploded as Brooke continued, her voice unwavering. "He has illegally bet on games and manipulated outcomes for financial gain," reporters whispered, stunned, the tension in the room thickening like humidity before a storm. "He then used marital assets to cover his debts and to support his affair." Robert lunged toward her, but Tammy blocked him with a single warning glare, her loyalty a fortress in the chaos. "And finally," Brooke said, her voice growing stronger, "when I confronted him, he threatened to leave me with nothing if I did not protect his lies." A hush fell, the only sound Brooke's steady breath and the low hum of the lights above. "For my own integrity and for every woman who has ever been silenced, I am filing for divorce today. I will not be threatened, I will not be controlled, and I will not be complicit." The microphone crackled as she stepped away, the texture of the folder a final reminder of her courage. Robert shouted after her, but Brooke kept walking, past the cameras, past the reporters, past the man she once loved and no longer recognized. The questions came fast, some sharp and cutting, others laced with an unexpected sympathy. Brooke answered with measured honesty, revealing only what she chose and never more. She spoke of resilience, of rebuilding, of the cost and the necessity of drawing boundaries when the world tried to smudge them away. Robert, seated in the shadows off stage, clenched his fists as the spotlight shifted entirely from his scandal to her strength. Each answer from Brooke rendered his presence less significant, the crowd's attention pivoting to the woman who refused to be defined by betrayal. Reporters scribbled furiously, their stories changing in real time as Brooke's truth eclipsed the chaos he'd created. When the last question faded into silence, Brooke took a deep breath before stepping out of the room. A feeling of lightness settled in her chest, a space where fear had once lived. Tammy joined her, squeezing her hand, their shared courage a quiet celebration. Together, they walked through the throng of reporters, past the blinding flashes, and out into the morning sun. Brooke's story was no longer a secret. She carried not just evidence of her pain, but proof of her power. Outside, the sun was climbing higher, flooding the campus walkways with warm light. Tammy embraced her with fierce joy that made Brooke's knees buckle. "You did it," Tammy whispered. For Brooke, it wasn't just about surviving the press conference, but about the promise she'd made to herself, that she would never again allow her voice to be buried beneath someone else's story. As they walked away together, the world behind them buzzing with the news, Brooke felt the possibility of everything ahead, for the first time unafraid. Chapter 7. Rebuilding the Woman She Lost. The divorce finalized in record time. On the day of the hearing, Brooke sat in the courtroom, hands folded tight, listening as the judge read the final ruling. With every word, a weight she hadn't realized she was carrying began to slip from her shoulders. As her name was spoken, her assets declared safe and separate, she felt a rush of relief so profound it nearly brought her to tears. For the first time in years, she let herself imagine a future untethered from fear and the control of someone else, a life that belonged to her alone. Tammy proved every asset Brooke claimed was separate property or clean money. The house was awarded to her, her retirement savings protected, 2 additional accounts Robert thought she didn't know about, also hers. The victory was not just legal, but deeply personal, a restoration of dignity and independence. Brooke didn't rejoice in Robert's downfall as his career ended and his reputation collapsed. She simply exhaled, a trembling sigh marking the beginning of something new. In the months that followed, Brooke moved into a new life. She discovered quiet mornings filled with sun-dappled calm, evenings free from tension, and a gentle certainty growing in her chest. She noticed slowly how safety felt, the absence of watching her words, the freedom to open windows without worrying who might come home in a mood she couldn't predict. She marveled at the simple joy of grocery shopping alone, of choosing flowers for herself, of sleeping soundly through the night. And then, unexpectedly, she met Jonathan Wells, a gentle, brilliant sports physiologist who had once worked under Robert but left the program because the atmosphere didn't feel right. Jonathan made a vivid impression from the moment they met. He noticed when her head ached after a stressful day, quietly brewing her a cup of chamomile tea and researching herbal remedies to help her rest. He listened, really listened, to her stories, never interrupting or dismissing her feelings, often offering thoughtful insights or gentle humor that eased her anxieties. Brooke admired his sincerity, his habit of sending encouraging texts before her big presentations, his way of remembering tiny details that mattered to her, like her favorite bookstore or how she took her coffee. He never raised his voice, never made her question her worth. Jonathan's kindness was quiet but steadfast, visible in small gestures, sharing umbrella space during a sudden rainstorm, volunteering at the local youth center on weekends, and once, spending hours helping her assemble a bookshelf just because he knew she wanted her new home to feel solid and safe. They fell in love slowly, beautifully, honestly. Each day with Jonathan was a step further into a world Brooke had once believed unreachable, a world where trust was possible and happiness was not a fragile hope, but a reality she could build and claim for herself. Epilogue: The Life She Deserved. Brooke stood on the wide, weathered porch of the home she now shared with Jonathan, the boards gently creaking beneath her bare feet. The air was tinged with the sweet scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass, and the laughter of their two young daughters danced through the dusk, mingling with the distant chirp of crickets. Fireflies drifted low, their glow flickering in the amber light as the girls chased them, arms outstretched, faces lit with wonder. Jonathan stepped outside, the screen door whispering shut behind him, and slid his arms warmly around Brooke's waist. His touch grounded her, a gentle anchor as she leaned into him and watched the girls tumble through the grass, squealing with delight. He kissed her cheek, soft and reassuring. "You okay, love?" he asked, his breath warm against her skin. Brooke nodded, her gaze lingering on the scene before her. Better than okay. Yet beneath the calm, memories surged, one in particular. The afternoon she stood alone in her empty apartment, divorce papers clutched tight, the world heavy and silent. That day, she stared at her reflection and forced herself to speak aloud the promise she'd once written with a trembling hand. "I will not let my story be written by anyone else." It was the first time she truly claimed authorship of her life. No longer defined by betrayal or fear, but by the power to choose, to begin. Again, she thought of the night she'd lain awake, remembering the pain, questioning her strength. Each challenge, every moment she felt lost, was now a quiet thread woven into the tapestry of her present. The scent of summer air, the gleam of fireflies, the chorus of her daughter's laughter, they were proof of a happiness built, earned, and cherished. Her life was not a fairy tale. It was richer, deeper, and wholly her own. Brooke smiled, squeezing Jonathan's hand. She had remarried, had children, had peace, had joy. And this time, with every page she turned, she knew she was the author. She'd chosen a partner who treasured each chapter, and together, as dusk settled gently around them, Brooke savored the story she had written and was still writing with hope, gratitude, and love. Thank you for listening to today's story on L.A. Logan's Listening Lounge, where every chapter is crafted with heart and a touch of healing. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you cheer for Brooke's transformation, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more powerful audiobooks. Share this with someone who loves a good plot twist, a strong heroine, and a beautiful new beginning. Until next time, keep listening, keep dreaming, and remember, you deserve a story that loves you back.